So hello everyone, it's Melanie here. This is another series with my craft tool time, and where I'm trying to go back to some of the basics and share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years with crafting and scrapbooking and so forth. And today's session is about embossing folders. This is by no means all of the variety of embossing folders that are out there, but this is just a few. So let's go through them quickly. This is like a 4x6 standard size embossing folder. They're basically all the same. And I will explain to you about these labels that I use. This is just how I organize my embossing folders, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But let's just go over this. So you have kind of an embossed feel here. I know you can't see that on the video, but these are indentations, this is indented into this hard plastic, and these kind of stick out. So when you put your paper in here, it is going to emboss this side and deboss the back side, and I'll show you more about that in a minute. It's 4x6. They also come in a 5x7 size. Works the same way with the embossed and debossed side, and sometimes they're mixed. Then you have a 3D folder, and this just makes really deep 3D impressions. I don't know if you can see, that is quite a bit more raised than the regular embossing folders. You also have some that have words in them, and like this from the We Are Memory Keepers actually has a grid to help you align your paper. Then there's little tiny embossing folders like this one from Cuttlebug. It's a sweet little baby buggy. These will all work with your embossing machines. Then you've got borders. Same thing, just a little bit longer. You see? All kinds of borders. I mean, the variety out there is just exponential. So with this particular brand, this shows you which side is up and which side is down. So when you're placing your paper in here, the green would be up as you run it through your machine. Hence, these labels that I've applied to my own folders help me determine which side's up and which side's down, because you could easily run this through and be confused, right? So that helps me. And look at this tiny little border. I use these a lot, like on envelopes and such. Then you've got the 3D impresslets, and what this does is it gives you a 3D impression, and it also includes the die in your folder to cut out the actual wings. So with one pass, it cuts out the wings and does the embossing. That's a 3D impresslet. So let's move on. All right, so I will actually go and make some additional videos showing some of those other embossing folders, but for today, we're just going to concentrate on the standard 4x6 and 5x7 folders. Now for the 4x6 folder, you can use that with one of my favorite tools, which is the Sizzix Texture Boutique. This little tool is one of the first things I've ever bought. It actually has some rollers in here that apply pressure to your embossing folder, which is what presses this folder into your paper to result in an embossed paper. And it comes with these little plates on each side. I always add a few shims. It does give you the sandwich that you need to make for your embossing folder. It shows you can put a card on each side of the embossing folder or just a piece of paper. You put it between the two plates and run it through your machine. And you've seen this done on many of my videos. It would go like this with paper in it, and you would simply run it through your machine. Again, I'll go back through that using some of these actual folders in subsequent videos. Now, if you're going to use a 5x7 folder, obviously that will not fit through the Texture Boutique, because you can see the folder is quite a bit bigger than the plates, and of course it will not go through that opening of the Texture Boutique. It's not big enough. So over here, you would actually use something like the Sizzix Big Shot. As you can see, this is quite a bit bigger than the Texture Boutique, which looks like this. Has this size of opening. This is a little bit bigger. See, those plates are bigger than that opening. So, the standard plate that comes with your Big Shot, like this magnetic plate, is not going to work for an embossing folder. It's too thick. For this particular Sizzix, you would have to have this extended platform. And you can see it's got different tabs. This one is for die cutting. This is with the different impression pads and Sizzix and so forth. And then this one in particular is for embossing folders. So you would flip to the very last platform here. And instead of using the one that came with the machine, you would use this and a plate. Put your paper in your embossing folder. Now you can see the 5x7 is going to go through here. And you would run that through your embossing machine. If you were going to use these borders, you would need this extended platform. Why? Because if you had a shorter platform like this, you can see that this border embossing folder would not fit, so you'd have to shift it. However, if you use the extended, you've got plenty of length for this whole border embossing. And of course, it will obviously work with the 4x6 folders as well. So this is actually more versatile. Like I said, I just started with the Texture Boutique. I love it. It's great for this and smaller sized, like the smaller embossing folders or those borders that I showed you. You don't have to mess with flipping back and forth through these different tabs of your platform. And so there is the difference between the Texture Boutique, this machine, and the Sizzix Big Shot, which is this machine. So the Sizzix Big Shot can be used for embossing and die cutting. The Texture Boutique, embossing folders only. All right, let's just do a little sample here of what an embossing folder does for you. So again, here's my Texture Boutique. So I'm going to be using this little 4x6 folder. This is the up side and this is the back side. I'm going to put a piece of paper in here. It's roughly 4x6 inches. I'm going to sandwich that folder in between these two black plates and run that through my machine. It's very, very easy to crank this through. You only have to do it one time. And it is going to leave a beautiful embossed piece of paper that looks like this. So here is the embossed side. You can see those kind of raised. And this is the debossed side. Either one of these would be beautiful on your projects. Debossed, embossed. As promised, I told you I'd show you my storage solution. So I have a Cricut machine and I cut out several of these little tag looking things here. That's what I use for this. This is how I catalog my embossing folders. So you can see I have samples of what each one of my embossing folders can do. And I can quickly flip through here when I'm working on my projects to see which folder I want to use. Now on the flip side of each one of these is a label. Let me go to this Antique Keys. This is the one we did a sample of just a minute ago. You can see I have a label here that says Antique Keys. That's on these little tags I cut out. And then I have a box like this that is where I store all of my embossing folders. And they're in alphabetical order because I have, you know, issues with organization. So I make two labels when I print these on my printer at home. It says Antique Keys There's one label for my folder and one for my sample. But I just put on these little jump rings like this. And so forth. And when, sometimes some of these I've got the name of the company, like this, Butterfly on Flower by Doris. That's what that looks like. And I can go over here and look up Butterfly on Flower in alphabetical order. Let me see. I pull this. It's by Doris, and that's what the whole folder looks like. So that's just how I chose to store all of my embossing folders and catalog them. If that helps you, that'd be fabulous. This is just what I do to help me. By putting them in alphabetical order and having these samples on hand along with the name, I can easily find that when I decide to use this, and then I just put it back in order. So the next time, I don't have to search through all of my folders. I just know I want to use Butterfly on Flower. It looks kind of like that. I can find it alphabetically in my box. So that's my tip of the day on the different embossing machines that are available, at least what I have, and also how I store and catalog all of my embossing folders. I will have another video on tips and tricks for you next week. I hope you will become a subscriber if you're not already one. And if you want to leave me any questions or leave a comment, I would love to hear from you. Happy crafting, everyone.